the presentation, and then regardless, it'll be recorded for everyone. So anin kinawia, miigwech for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for our Entrepreneur Workshop Series. I'd like to give a chi miigwech to Jennifer and Vince from the Business Center Nipissing Parry Sound, who have organized this great event for us. As I'm sure you're all aware, Indigenous owned and led businesses are flourishing across Canada. This has provided us with an opportunity to prosper in an economy that had once excluded us. As of 2020, Indigenous people are the youngest and fastest growing demographic in Canada, starting businesses at a rate that is 9 times higher than their non-Indigenous counterparts. With both corporate and government organizations actively implementing procurement policies to promote the inclusion of Indigenous businesses, there has never been a better time for an Indigenous entrepreneur to start a business in Canada. We hope that each of you will gain valuable insights and knowledge from these sessions. In due course, we will be distributing a feedback questionnaire to gather your thoughts and opinions on how we could improve this workshop in the years to come. As an added incentive, all members who complete the survey will receive a $50 gift card to Arrowhead Gas Bar. So be sure to keep an eye out in your inbox for this. I also wanted to let everyone know that these sessions will be recorded with the hopes of uploading them to our website in the future. And at this time, I'd like to introduce this week's presenter, Vincent Galea from the Business Center Nipissing Parry Sound. Miigwech, Vince.
Awesome. Thank you so much, miigwech. I appreciate you having me. Today, I'm basically just going to be talking about the business planning process and kind of jumping right into that. Normally, that's not necessarily where I start, intro to entrepreneurship type workshops, but I figured, and we figured the last time we did this program, that because business planning or having a business plan is actually a requirement to having a license on NFN, it's probably important to make sure that everyone understands what would even go in a business plan and how that process is sorted. Just so I can talk a little bit about the credibility as to, why I know what I'm talking about is for the past 5 years here at the Business Center, I've helped people review business plans to apply to different funding opportunities in the region, whether it be loan or grant based. So we usually help people work on a plan section by section until it's good to go to bring to that potential funder. If at any point, you're doing this workshop and you're seeing the presentation and you're like, oh, I could actually use some help doing a business plan, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. We can book appointments anytime. They can be either in person or virtual if you're able to make it to North Bay City Hall where my office is located, but I'm more than happy to do a Teams or Zoom call or even just a phone call at any time as well too to go over any of these topics. So without further ado, I'm actually just going to get into a PowerPoint presentation that I have prepared. One sec, let me actually move the screen over. Sorry, I'm more of a Zoom guy than a Teams guy. So I got to make sure, stop sharing. I think I have to reshare on this side. Okay, just a confirmation. Can I have someone tell me if they can see this here? And
yeah, I can see your screen.
You're seeing
Yep.
just the presentation and not the notes on the back end?
Yeah, just the presentation.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so let's just kind of jump right into it. So basically what usually begins a business plan, or at least the template that we like to use, is a business profile. The business profile is kind of a general overview or summary of the business idea. What is, the name, the structure, when do you plan to start, when did you start if it's already existing, what's your address, what is, your contact information. So that's kind of what this slide here shows is, you would basically just list that out to make sure that people have a general idea of, what the business is. So then I have just kind of an example here. This could be ABC company. It's owned 50% by John Doe, 50% by Jane Doe. It is, a partnership. It's located on Main Street in North Bay. This is their phone number, contact information. So that's, just pretty basic stuff. Most people don't usually have an issue with this section. After that, you usually go into a written portion on the business plan, kind of talking about the overview, where the business is going to be located and what the geographic service area of the business is, because sometimes a business is located in, say, North Bay or on NFN, but it actually can do business in a much wider area. Maybe they cover all of the Nipissing or the West Nipissing districts. So definitely include that in your business profile. You also want to describe what the problem in the market that you are trying to solve is. The main thing with this is every business, or usually every business, is trying to solve a problem, and you need to think about what that problem is and what your solution is. Some people, when they hear problem, they assume it's like a bad thing, and that's not necessarily the case. It's just kind of the term that people who look at business from a theoretical level use when it comes to defining the reason that someone would go to get a service or purchase a product. So if the problem that I have is that I'm a little sluggish at work, the solution might be a coffee. Do you see what I mean? So it's not like it's a dastardly problem. We're not talking about, global warming or something, like a much bigger problem. It could be a micro problem or it could be a macro problem, and it's up to you to define that and what you're actually going to be doing to help solve that problem. So you do want to explain whatever that product or service is in detail. You want to try to assume that the person reading it has no idea about your industry. This is something that happens where you might think, if you're passionate or skilled in a certain industry, that the knowledge that you have might be commonplace, but you've probably forgotten what you didn't know, if you understand what I'm saying. A lot of times, like, I've done consults with engineers or scientists, and they talk to me in very technical terms that I don't have an education on, and I just kind of smile and nod, and then I have to be like, I didn't get anything you just told me. So you need to assume that a layman or someone who has a general knowledge is going to be reading your plan. So try to basically explain it as if you were explaining it to someone in grade 6, like an elementary school student, where it's like they have a general comprehension of things, but you need to make sure that maybe the not obvious points are touched on, unless you know that the reader or wherever the grant is going to be coming from, or a funding source, is an organization that specializes in one specific industry. Then you can most likely use more technical knowledge because you know that the reader will have that technical knowledge. And then you want to break down each of the forms that you make money into what are known as revenue streams. And these are basically the categories of your product or services. An easy one to break down as an example is there might be a restaurant, and a restaurant would have a sit-down restaurant service, like a typical restaurant. You go to it, you sit at the table, and you order your food, and you then pay for it at the end, and you leave. But they might also have a catering service, which is going to have an entirely different transaction, and it's also going to be entirely different in the nature of how it's delivered, because that would be, you call the restaurant, you ask about their catering service, they might book a time for you to get samples, then they'll find the day of your event and they will send somebody there with prepared food or prepare it on site. So the nature of that revenue stream is entirely different. So you need to think about what product or services are you delivering, and are there any product or services that are vastly different in the way that they're being delivered? And if they are, then most likely you would categorize them as different revenue streams. Another section that a lot of people do put and should put in their business profile is a business history. This basically explains how your idea came about. Why are you starting this business? Why do you want to start this business? So it almost ends up being, even though it's called a business history, a lot of the times for startup businesses or the clients that I deal with, it's actually the personal history. It's a lot of the time it's, what's your background? What have you accomplished so far towards this business goal? What is your story? What is your background? What is your experience that would actually be relevant to your business venture? The reason that this section is important, it a lot of the time depends on the potential reader of the business plan. But if you end up applying for, say, a grant or something like that. A lot of the time, the people who make the decision on said grant are made up of a board of people, and not all of them are, former bankers or financial advisors. Like, not every single one cares only on the numbers. Some people like the story side of it, the qualitative side of it. They like to invest in the individual as opposed to necessarily the business. So they want to see what your story is. Kind of the feel good stuff, I guess. Trying to say it in a nice way, but that's, some people like that, and some people don't necessarily care about that. But you don't know who a lot of the time the reader is going to be of your business plan, so you kind of want to try to appeal to all potential readers. You'll then also want to have goals and objectives. So this could be short and long-term business goals. Usually we categorize them in year 1, year 3, and year 5 goals. And these goals could be on a wide variety of things. It's whatever you think your business goal should be. You do want them to be usually goals related to the business and not personal goals. You can put personal goals, but I would separate them in a different category. And this could be, what your sales targets per month are, or what you'd like your sales targets per month to be. How many new clients have you acquired over a given time period? Are you hiring any staff to handle any specific responsibilities? Do you have a website that you plan to launch with a certain amount of features at a given time? Are you adding a new revenue stream, launching a new product, anything of that nature, opening another location, doing a grand opening for that other location? These are all examples of goals. But you don't want to be vague with these goals. You want to consider that they should be, this is an acronym, but SMART goals. It stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive. Like, it has a time frame of some kind. So you want this to be consistent throughout your plan. So these goals, when you list them and you put measurable components to them, you want to make sure that those numbers, if you put any numbers, are relevant with the information that you put later down the plan. And this could involve actually going back and forth between the goals or numbers that you might write later on in the plan and making sure that they're still relevant all the way through. Because if people write the plan section by section, they might forget what they've put in the first section. So this is usually a common spot that would have inconsistent information, because you might have set a goal and then after you've done more research and continued on with the plan, you realize, okay, maybe that goal was too lofty or it was too low. Now that I have more research, I actually think I can project higher with these goals. So an example of how to word a SMART goal, or just a simple SMART goal, is, hire an employee by year 1 of operation, by the end of year 1. You'd also want to indicate that the employee is used for a specific task, like hire an employee to handle social media management or basic administration by the end of the fiscal year 2023. So that has, a specific measurable component. It's a thing that can be checked off. And the main reason to do this is some people would write a business plan just for themselves as a blueprint, but others also, from the outside looking in, like a potential funder, they like to see that you have these goals set up, because they want to basically, here's my analogy, they don't want to help you lay the dominoes out, but they want to be the one who gets to flick the first domino. So if they're cutting you the check, that's like that to, give you a loan, that's them flicking the first domino. But these goals are you having set all those dominoes in place. So another thing to put in your profile is a vision and mission statement. This basically is how you see your business maybe 5 to 10 years from now. So this can actually be a loftier goal. This could be big picture. It kind of describes the how and the why of your business. It doesn't have to be a long statement. A lot of the time it could be a sentence or a few words even. While the mission statement is kind of a task or a day-to-day thing that you do every day that you use to make sure, or try to make sure, that you're going to reach that vision that you've set for yourself. So you kind of want the mission and vision statements to guide your business decisions. This can be used as, like a personal mantra in a way if you're just a one-person business, which the majority of businesses I deal with are. But eventually, if you hire employees, this kind of vision or mission statement could end up influencing the company culture, how all the staff or all the team members end up viewing the company or the organization. Doesn't necessarily have to be a company. A lot of not-for-profits and charities obviously, of course, have vision and mission statements as well. Here's just some examples of vision statements. Basically, I can read them over. There's McDonald's is one there. IKEA's is short and sweet. Our vision is to create a better everyday life for many people. So it's, not that specific, but it shows kind of what they are trying to do to foresee or to see through that vision and to get to that end goal, even if that end goal is unattainable. Realistically, it's impossible for everybody to have a great everyday life, but it is potentially possible that IKEA can help people furnish their homes to have a more comfortable or better or more organized life, which is kind of where they're getting at with that. A mission statement can still be short and sweet as well, but it's more about what the company feels that they are actually doing. So American Express, the credit card company, they work hard every day to make American Express the world's most respected service brand. TED Talks, I'm sure you've seen TED Talks before in the past. Their mission statement is just spread ideas. And that basically is exactly what a TED Talk is they get different speakers on different topics, and their goal is just to spread ideas publicly as best as they can. So you can kind of use these as like inspiration if you are ever looking at your own vision or mission statement. Then there's also what is known as a value statement or a value proposition. This is kind of what your business principles, beliefs, and philosophies are, and it kind of helps identify what the company values, which ideally your target market also has those same values from a personal level. So if you respect things like honesty, respect, integrity, fun, productivity, punctuality, just basically any concept that you find that you admire as an individual, or if you've already got a larger company with a group of people, what you feel like your group of individuals or your team values, you would want to kind of just list those out and then define them based on how that is relevant to your business. So if I said one of my values is, excellent customer service, then I would write in the business plan excellent customer service, and then I would define why excellent customer service is important to my business. This is just a worksheet that I can send people as well that kind of just helps you break down your vision, mission, and value statement, and also just kind of redefines the questions that you'd like to answer and what the uses and the key points are. I don't have to go over this in too much detail for the sake of time, but I definitely, if you are looking to make one, I feel like this worksheet is simple and effective and can help people scope that perfect statement. So that is the end of the first section of the business plan. So I did go pretty fast there. It was only 25 minutes to cover a fair amount of information. So if there are any questions, I kind of like to do this informal. If anyone wants to unmute or interrupt or ask any questions throughout the presentation, don't hesitate to do so. I will pause just for a second if there are any questions now. Okay, it seems like we're good to keep going. So then, yeah, this is the second section of the business plan. This is the market research and target market section. The reason you'd want to conduct market research is because it helps define what that environment that your business is going to operate in. And there are definitely, it's hard to fully define what your market is going to be, because the nature of markets is that they're dynamic. They move up and down with economic conditions, social conditions, demographic changes, population changes, even things like weather, natural disasters, disease like COVID. There's so many different things that can actually affect the nature of a market. But based on averages and research and numbers that we can find using things like surveys, industry statistics, Statistics Canada, even just like well-researched or sourced Google searches or articles as well, you can kind of help find a better understanding of what the characteristics of your market are and what the preferences of your customers are. And it might even help you identify opportunities that you might have not considered that can help you increase sales and grow your business. It can also help you monitor the level of competition that might be in your market, because say maybe you think you have a great idea that is, here's a business term, going to operate in a blue ocean, which means it's not a red ocean. There's not sharks in the water trying to rip each other apart. A blue ocean is nice and peaceful. But if you then do a bit of digging and you start researching and realize, oh, there's actually a lot more competitors in this industry than I thought, maybe this ocean is too red and I should look for a bluer ocean, if you get the analogy. So it would help you, reduce risks in your business decisions as well. The more you know, the better decisions from a managerial perspective you're going to make. Because your decisions aren't going to be based on instinct, they're going to be informed. And the best decisions are usually kind of a mix of both. It's like you use your gut feeling, but you try to make them as educated decisions as possible. So I actually already went over these just when I was talking in analogies, but here's just some different sources of information that you can acquire market research. So feedback from focus groups, surveys, industry statistics, journals, publications, Statistics Canada, Industry Canada, and Google searches, or even sometimes asking, your local business organization, your chamber, your employment agencies, your economic development agencies, to see if they have any relevant information as well. You're also able to, if you're an existing business or have potential access to potential customers, it's good to just talk with your customers, have an open line of communication in your social media, encourage engagement, encourage people replying to your posts or getting basically the information directly from their mouths. Like if you can get if enough people tell you they would like a certain product in purple, maybe you should make that product in purple if it's not in purple already. Right? So don't be afraid to just kind of ask those questions and to be open-minded when it comes to discussing with your customers. I don't necessarily believe that adage like the customer is always right, but the customer is sometimes right. And if you think they're never right, then you're probably going to not have a successful business. It's the answer is, like everything in life, in that gray area in the middle ground. You'd want to make sure that you're looking into that area and not turning a blind eye one way or the other. So based on industry trends and market research, you are going to try to describe that geographic area that you're going to serve and everyone that you wish to reach in that area. So you're kind of with words, after doing the research, writing a paragraph or two that would paint a picture about what the community that you're going to be operating in is like and what your typical customer is like. This is what is known as psychographics. So you could actually try to search like, Northern Ontario psychographics and see if you can find information about your potential target market. And that could include, their interests, their hobbies, their what they do in their leisure time, what their income level is, what their education level is. Are they married? Are they single? Are they retired? Are they of working age? Are they students? Thinking about all that can actually greatly influence how you go about your marketing, how you go about trying to reach that target audience, and also the messaging that you use when you're trying to reach them. Are there also any seasonal or cyclical aspects of your business, and how will you manage this? So like, can your business only operate during the months where there's no snow on the ground, or is it all year round? Does your business take a large hit or get a large boost over different, cultural or traditional holidays, or just kind of aspects of your local economy? So an example, because I'm here in North Bay, a really common one is a lot of businesses that are retail businesses in the McEwen area, that strip next to the school, get a huge boost when the students come, and also have a pretty substantial drop when they leave. So then the months of April to September are actually cyclically a very slow time for those retail locations. So then they have to, that's probably when you'll see potential sales or loss leading methods to try to bring people in, so that they can try to get more sales and recoup some of their costs and clear some of their old inventory, so that they can scale back up for when the students come again in September. If you have indicated in your goals that you wish to expand into a different market, so say in your goals you said you wanted to open a second location in Sudbury or in North Bay if you're on NFN, or in even another reserve of some kind as well too, then you'd want to get applicable research, not just for your area, but for that area as well. And you do want to also include about 3 to 5 trends in the industry. It says past, present, and future, but to be honest, present and future trends are the most important ones. Past trends, it's like, it's good to know from a historical perspective. And a lot of times, depending on the industry, like fashion and stuff like that, what's old is new again. So it is sometimes important to know that. But a lot of the times, it's good to look towards the future when it comes to business, to prepare yourself for any trends that you might not be considering. A lot of the time, they could be technological trends. They could be trends related to ease of access using cell phone apps, or contactless payment, or online bookings, things of that nature that might not have been considered. And if you're not prepared for it, your target market, just due to that transactional hiccup, might skip your business entirely, because they're going to go to someone who offers the way that they prefer to do that transaction or to communicate with your company. So the most important aspect of research is kind of how you interpret it, because you can look at a bunch of numbers and just throw it down and say, yep, this is the information, but you kind of want to make sure that when you're putting stats or putting numbers, that you're writing why it's relevant to you. And you do want to cite the sources as well. Bare minimum, it says here, like, use endnotes or footnotes. Most of the time, funders or bankers, they don't care about source formatting, MLA, APA, any of that stuff. If you've ever written an essay, they really just care that you show where you got the information. The easiest way to do that, if you found it online, is just put the link. Just copy the link somewhere and say, all information for this market research section was found here, 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 and here, and just copy the links right in. That way it just shows that this information, the statistical information, was not pulled out of thin air. It was actually found somewhere and vetted by these credible sources. So yeah, this is just kind of restating that, make sure that the information that you found on the internet, it isn't yours. So you do need to show credit to the person and to show that credibility behind the information that you're saying. And then the last section, or one of the later sections, sorry, it used to be the last section. I shouldn't say that anymore. We've changed the way we format it. But one of the later sections that's important is your key competitors. It is important to find what your key competitors are, whether they're direct, indirect, substitutes, alternatives. It is important to think that just because someone isn't doing exactly what you're doing in that area, that doesn't mean you have no competitors. Because back to that problem solution talk when we were talking about the business profile, is your problem or the customer's problem might be being solved elsewhere. So if we go back to the problem I talked about when, okay, I'm tired and sluggish at work, so then my solution might be caffeine, so I'm going to go get a coffee. But I could also get a tea. I could also get like a smoothie with, vitamins and minerals and stuff, which probably scientifically would be more effective than just adding more caffeine to my system. But at the end of the day, whatever solution I choose, I'm still trying to solve that same problem. So then that's actually an indirect competitor, because if I go to a place that only serves coffee and tea, and then there's another place down the road that only does smoothies, they might be doing different stuff, but they might be trying to solve the same problem. So you kind of need to look at it from a big perspective. And then when you are listing all your competitors, you want to actually put their details as best as you can and try to write about or put what their strengths and weaknesses are. And you want to do so in a way that is objective, or as objective as you can. So the easiest way, in my opinion, to do that is look at Google or Facebook reviews of your potential competitors and see what their target market is saying about them. Because that is a good way to be objective, and it's not just like, oh yeah, I think these guys suck and that's my opinion. That's not necessarily going to fly or look as professional as it should on a business plan, but you can say, based on this amount of Google reviews, this is how many were 1-star, and the reason that they listed these 1-star reviews were based on this, and this. And also, these are the amount of 5-star reviews, and the strengths that they listed for that 5-star review were this, and this. So it's not just, I'm saying this as my opinion. Here is actually where I found that information to get that. So here's just kind of an example write-up. I don't need to go over it in too much detail, but this is basically showing that here is, the listed potential competitor, and then a write-up of their strengths and weaknesses. This is a YouTube video from one of the other programs that we run. I'm not going to actually watch it here. Just if you do want to watch it on your own time, if you just Google or put in YouTube the milkshake conundrum, it's basically a Harvard lecture breakdown of more in detail why simple goods can have a lot of different competitors because they're servicing that same need. So, for example, if you're trying to just have something to keep you busy on a long commute and you want to get like a snack or a drink or something, technically then, fruit, donuts, bagels, chocolate bars, coffee, smoothies, whatever, any of that stuff are actually all competing with each other, because at the end of the day, they're going to fill your stomach in some way, and then that need will be fulfilled. And also you'll be less bored on your long commute because you had something to keep your hands busy while you're listening to the radio or a podcast or whatever. So that's this just kind of breaks that down in a bit more detail with a bit more research, and talks about the practical research as to, how they were able to find that. And at the end of the day, they found that by talking to their customers and just asking them, why were you ordering this milkshake? And the answer was, I have a long commute and I wanted something to do. and it was, and that was basically it. So then they started realizing, like, oh, okay, well then we need to be careful of all the other places that potentially offer the same thing to do, or to solve that need of, boredom when someone's sitting in their car. So then you do want to define a target market a target market can be either an individual or a business or organization. You might hear when you're talking with business people, they'll say the terms B2B or B2C. B2B means business to customer or business to consumer, and B2B means business to business. And they're both very valid ways of running your business. It just kind of shows how the transactions are done and the type of marketing that's being done to conduct those transactions or to generate awareness that those transactions are available to those targets. When you want to try to find research on your target market, you want to think about the demographics. What is their age range? What is their gender, their marital status, their occupation, their income, their education, their ethnic background? Where do they live? Like, what type of area do they live in? Because the people who live in rural areas versus urban areas might have very different needs, or they live in a downtown area, or they live on the water. So understanding that as well can definitely help. And then that behavioral aspect is kind of that psychographic aspect I was talking about earlier. That's the interest, values, beliefs, behaviors, things of that nature. So yeah, like I said earlier, your target market can be both individuals and businesses. You do want to describe your customer and their characteristics as best as possible. And you're kind of, with the goal of this section, is you are trying to make, almost painting a picture with words, what your ideal customer is. This person might not actually exist, or chances are the exact person that you create in this hypothetical scenario doesn't exist, but there might be a lot of people like them. So you want to be vague with enough specifics that it would actually reach a potential target. So the example I learned in school, I had a teacher at Nipissing who used to work for Johnson & Johnson, which is like a family and pharmaceutical company. And she worked on the marketing for Tylenol. And on her marketing for Tylenol, they had a target market of this lady named Susan, who was a working soccer mom who suffered from migraines, but still had to, get through her day and take the kids to soccer practice, and be able to drive without her migraines, causing her too many issues. And she would take Tylenol to help relieve that. And this was a hypothetical scenario. There wasn't actually a Susan. I mean, there's probably a lady named Susan who has migraines who is also a soccer mom. But this was, again, the hypothetical scenario that they brought. And they actually had a paper cutout of Susan, this fake entity, and they would bring the paper cutout with them to marketing board meetings. And whenever they would talk about a decision for their marketing, or the wording of the marketing, they would point at Susan and be like, does this type of marketing make sense for Susan? Because she's 80% of our customers, or people like Susan are 80% of our customers. So this is kind of what you're trying to do, obviously on a much smaller scale. You're not a multinational billion-dollar pharmaceutical company, at least I don't think so. And if you are, where can I send my resume? I'm joking. But if you are, doing anything of that nature, it's still good to have an idea of the type of person that you are going to be reaching. And eventually you might realize that the person you define in this business plan isn't actually the type of customer that you should be targeting, and you might pivot or change it. For example, there was a person I helped who was doing a detailing business, and they thought their target market was going to be working professionals who wanted to keep their car clean and presentable, things like real estate agents, things like that. What it ended up actually being was like younger to, so like, let's say 25 to 40-year-old men who were taking their nice cars to car shows or to car meetups. And that ended up actually being like 60 to 70% of their business, was because these guys, they had their car, they had their baby, and they wanted to make sure that it always looked good when they took it to the meetups or the car shows. And that ended up driving a lot of the marketing, and then they realized, the detailing company, they had to pivot the type of marketing they were doing to go more towards that type of crowd, as opposed to the crowd that they thought they were going to be targeting. Your marketing efforts should always be, consumer centric, or thinking about the business decision maker if it's a B2B business. And that kind of means that your target market is your first priority, like I said, when making any business decision relating to how you plan to market. So what channels are you going to be using? If your ideal target customer is, let's say 16 to 25, and like the younger demographic, and you're trying to market to them on Facebook, you might actually just be completely dodging them, because chances of them using Facebook as their main social media are actually pretty low. Chances are they're actually going to be using TikTok or Instagram, because those skew significantly younger than Facebook does these days. So you need to make sure that you're not sending messages into a void where they're not actually going to be seen by the people you want them to be seen by. This is just kind of a visual representation of all that information that you can also do as well. It kind of just shows each of the categories and the considerations that you would be thinking about when creating this persona that you plan to use for marketing purposes. Some people like a more straightforward approach as opposed to this more visual chart approach, so then you can also use this target market worksheet, which I will send to Zach to distribute to anyone who's interested as well. And you could use this when creating that business plan if you do plan to apply for a license on NFN. So that's the end of this one workshop. So that's the end of the market research section, but we are talking about all of business planning today. So I tried to do this the last time we did these workshops in just an hour. I'm very glad that we extended it to an hour and a half, because there's a lot of information to cover. But I am going to take a little break here just for a bit to see if there is any questions. And if there aren't, then I'll move on to the next section. Okay, so it looks like everything's good. If there are, again, any questions that you want to have a discussion about, feel free to get, my contact information from Zach, or I can attach it in the chat as well too, and we can book a meeting as well.
Thank you very much.
Oh, no worries. Let's go to then the next one here. And just get a confirmation. Are you seeing the presentation?
Yep, I'm seeing it here on my screen.
Yes,
Perfect. Okay. So next is the sales and marketing section of the plan. So this is on our template, section 3 out of 5. And I'm only going to go over 1 to 4 today, because 5 is the financial forecasting section, which will be all of the next workshop that Jesse Longlaid from the Case Populaire will be covering in more detail. So in the sales and marketing section, you want to define your revenue streams if you haven't defined it already in the business profile in detail. So it doesn't matter where you decide to define them. You can either put it in this section or in the business profile, as long as the detail is there, but you don't need to repeat yourself if you have already defined these revenue streams. Just for the sake of keeping the plan at a reasonable length, because a lot of people, or at least a lot of bankers, they have a ton of business plans to go through. So then they definitely appreciate when things are more concise, as long as all the relevant information is there. So in terms of the pricing strategy, this is a very important thing in order for forecasting your revenues, is if you've got a product or service, you do need to figure out how you're going to price it, or what you're going to use to price that product or service, and why you chose that price, or kind of have a justification as to why. So you want to identify what the costs of producing that product or providing that service are. So whatever those costs are is actually what is known in business as your costs of goods sold. Sometimes people just take it as an acronym and call it COGS. So if you ever hear someone say, what are your COGS? That's what they mean, your cost of goods sold. And then what your markup or profit is going to be. So a lot of times it's best, I tell people, at least as a starting point, to maybe look at what your competitors charge. But you can also look at like what your industry is and then search what's the average percentage markup when selling a product in this industry. Because some industries might have very tight margins and some industries might have very large margins. So like grocery stores, for example, they sell a lot in terms of revenue, but their margins are like tiny. Like, and I mean like tiny, like less than 10 to 5% on a lot of products. While if you go buy a pair of glasses, this is the worst offender by far, because if you have glasses, you know what you probably spent on them. And I'll tell you now that even prescription glasses, the average cost to make these is 13 cents. So that will make you feel bad about what you paid to get your glasses. Even if you own a pair of high-end Ray-Bans that you spent $350, $400 on, it costed them 13 cents to make it. So that is probably the most egregious physical product in terms of markup percentage-wise. So, you know, it is really based on what is known as perceived value. At least that's the pricing strategy that they use, because not all products are based on just what's the cost of goods and what's a reasonable markup, because clearly they're not using a reasonable markup, because we should only be paying $3 for our glasses, and that's more than a reasonable markup. But that perceived value of like, I like seeing, I like the fact that I can see my screen right now comfortably. So I was okay with paying the amount that I paid to get my glasses, right? So if your product has that additional value that it provides people, then it might be worth charging more, as long as it's in a fair rate compared to what your competitors are charging. But it's also not worth it to keep undercutting a competitor, because that actually ends up leading to a race to the bottom, which is not good, because then eventually you're now both out of business because you're not charging enough to actually stay afloat. And the other reason that's bad is that kind of adage of perceived value can still apply to any type of business. Eventually, customers will see a product at such a low price and they'll think, what's the catch? What's wrong with it? You know, like if I see a laptop and I know that a typical decent quality laptop these days is usually between $1,000 to $1,500, unless you want like a graphics card, and that's gonna be like 2,000 plus. But then I see someone say, "Oh yeah, I'll sell you a laptop for 150 bucks." My first thought is not, "Oh, what a great deal on a laptop." My first thought is, "What the heck did you do to it? Where were the corners cut? I need to know." So that's kind of how you need to think about when you're pricing your products. Where's that line of, if I go to this price, it's actually going to be potentially fishy to my customer who's looking to buy it at that price, if they're used to paying a higher price for it. If your type of business involves like actually specific sale terms, like if it's a larger purchase and there might be like a deposit required, say you're like a contractor and you need to get materials purchased first and then the final invoice after the labor is completed, it is good in this section to write what the terms of your sale are going to be and what that transaction is going to look like, and also any additional details, like, do you provide free consultations? Do you provide quotes? Do you have bundled pricing or packages? Do you charge by the hour or by the job? These are kind of the considerations that will help a potential reader looking into the business plan understand how the business plan operates. But also for you, when you're later on in the business plan doing your financial forecasting, without your prices set and a justification for them, it's actually going to be really hard to forecast your financials, because you're not going to be able to be consistent with the pricing that you say you're going to charge. If it's too variable, or you're charging, sometimes this amount or sometimes this amount, or sometimes charging by the hour, sometimes charging by the job, you've created too many potential scenarios that when it comes to estimating your forecasts, it's almost impossible. Like, you're now going in 10 different directions when we're already trying to estimate. So the more that we can control, or the more controlled factors that we can create, such as setting a hard price for a specific service or a specific product, the easier that step is going to be. You'll also want to define what your marketing strategies are. So this is kind of like seeing what different channels you plan to use are, and what you, and by channels, that's like a marketing term for what methods of marketing you plan to use. So a channel could be business cards, it could be networking, it could be radio ad, it could be different social media platforms, it could be strategic partnerships or sponsoring an event, it could be hosting a press conference, it could be getting a newspaper ad. Basically anything that can generate awareness for your business in some way is a marketing channel, but not every customer, not every target market audience member is going to use every channel. So then you need to think about what target market like audience member am I trying to reach, and how do they like to consume their marketing? Or even, it's kind of weird to say that because no one likes to be marketed to, but how are they most likely to come across or consume your marketing? And then if that's the case, you need to make sure that the messaging on that channel fits the type of language that that individual is comfortable with, or is used to, or appreciates, or is most likely to engage with. And then there's a section called the sales cycle. This is more important for businesses that have a involved transactional process, or a more involved transactional process. If you were just selling sticks of gum at a corner store, you're not going to need a sales cycle. You can get rid of this section entirely. It's just going to be mostly irrelevant information. That's pretty obvious. But if you're selling a car, now we're getting more involved. So there might actually be additional steps. Or if you're selling like a specific consulting service, or things that involve a lot of potential follow-up, or markup, or a negotiation period, anything like that, then you'll want to kind of elaborate on this. And basically what it looks like is defining each of these areas in the sales cycle. So it'll starting at the top, you've got the first contact. So that's when you actually reach out to, or someone reaches out to you, and you make that point of first contact. So what kind of questions are you asking? Are you discovering their, building rapport with them? First off, what's the method that they're going to contact you on? How are you going to go about talking with them, building rapport, understanding them, discovering their wants and their needs? Is there a form of show and tell, as in like you've got a method to showcase your product, or to refer to testimonials to show that they've got proof in the pudding of the service that you're trying to provide, like people seem to have enjoyed, or you've got good reviews that you can kind of send people to? Are you, this is choosing client, it's supposed to say closing client. So that's a mistake. I'll fix that later. But close, so then eventually you get to the point of trying to close them, not in a pushy way. Don't ever be pushy when it comes to sales in 2023, because we're so used to being sold to that people are just going to up and leave. Everyone's had an experience where someone's been too pushy, and your instinct is now just to run or fight back and be like, get the heck out of my face. but you can still, in an amicable way, give them the final sale price, give them the option to make that decision. And if you were effective enough in the previous steps of showing that you have a knowledge of what they're trying to solve or what wants or needs they're trying to solve, then the close becomes a lot easier. It's just making sure that you refer to that option. Like some people, when they're doing sales, they do the informative part. They love to talk about their passion or their product or their service, but then they don't bring it back to, oh, and this is the price and this is how much you would want to, or this is what you would pay for it if you wanted these services. There might be a negotiation period after that. There might be some kind of like after sales thing. You give them a receipt, you say, thank you. Maybe if you're doing like contracting or like landscaping or lawn mowing, they gave you permission to put, a sign that you're doing work on their lawn, things like that. And then there might even be like a database or referral system where you keep in a customer relationship management software, or even just an Excel spreadsheet, or even more old school, just a pen and paper that you don't lose, hopefully, knock on wood. And then you can keep track of customer names and information, and if they ever reach out or follow up, or someone says, oh, I heard about your business through so-and-so, then maybe you can give them a discount because of the potential referral as well. And then also, do you have any customer service policies that are in place that you feel like you might need to tell a potential customer? So this would be, letting them know what the refund policy is, or if it's final sale, and just making that communication clear so that there's not any confusions if a scenario where one of those policies needed to be used or enacted, that you can say like, yeah, we talked about this, or we've laid that out, so there shouldn't have been any confusion. And that's it for the sales and marketing section. So I will take just another little quick pause before I get into the last section I'm going to cover today. Is there any questions in regards to sales and marketing? Okay, I'll take that as we're all good. We're now going to move into that last major written section. I shouldn't say major, it's not that intensive a section at all, but it is management and operations. It's kind of a logistic-based section. It's not the most fun. It's not the sexiest topic. It's basically, what are the ins and outs of your business and what is going to be involved to actually facilitate that business, and have you considered all the different factors that go into running that business. So the first thing is, if there's anyone beyond just the owner of the business, you got to consider human resources. Are you going to hire any staff? Are they going to be full-time? Are they going to be part-time? Are they going to be seasonal? Will you allow staff to just be like casual, schedule them in? How are you going to schedule them if they are full-time or part-time? When exactly do you plan to hire them? And if so, you might want to actually list that for consistency's sake as a goal in either year 1, year 3, or year 5 in those earlier categories. Will you engage in contractors? Indicate how you will kind of recruit, hire, or train staff, if there's anything like that involved in the type of business you're doing, or do they require any specific qualifications? Define how much you're going to pay them, if there's going to be raises considered. If you're in a business that you want as little turnover as possible, then definitely consider taking care of your staff and adding raises and considering benefits and things like that. Are there going to be, or what are their key responsibilities going to be if they've got like a specific job title? Indicate WSIB or other regulated requirements. This is kind of just a general one for the slides, because I've done this presentation for all kinds of businesses, but I always forget if businesses that have employees on a reserve require WSIB or not. I don't know if that's one of the ones that falls to the provincial regulation or one of the one that falls to the reserves regulation. I'm not 100% sure. Zach might be able to figure that out, or I will actually see if I can do some digging and get specific information if that situation ever comes up. And then if applicable, if you've got any information on volunteers, how many, how often, when, what kind of value are they contributing to the business? If there is, an opportunity that makes them a valid volunteer, this is good to consider, because if the CRA ever asks you about the relationship between you and one of your volunteers and kind of what they were offering, they need to make sure that it was a volunteer scenario. Because if it crosses a line where it's basically like they were doing an employee's work, then they'll actually demand that you pay them the rate of an employee and actually put them on payroll. So professional advisors. So if you have any kind of professional advisor or mentor that you're kind of working with, even at, as simple as an accountant, a lawyer, a banker, any specific consultant, you want to list them or their organization on the business plan and what the relationship with them is and kind of how they're planning to advise you or give you advice. This just kind of shows a potential funder that if in the previous sections of the plan you never really mentioned anything on bookkeeping, but then you write here that you've got a bookkeeper ready to go to help you out, then it avoids that question of, okay, are they comfortable doing their own books? And if not, how are they going to deal with it? Or are they just going to figure it out and then get audited, and then it's a bigger issue. Then you want to kind of define the location. This is more than just saying what the address is, because we've already said that in the business profile. This is more like, is it considered a business out of your home? Is it mobile? Is it online only? Does it have a commercial space? Do you own the building? Are you renting the building? Are you in that in between of being an NFN member with property you're allowed to build on, where you technically own the home? Whatever the logistics of the location are, then define them here. Are there any zoning requirements in regards to the type of building that you're doing? Like, are you allowed to do the type of business you plan to do based on the zoning requirements? Access is actually related more towards if your customers need to come to you or park or find you easily using Google Maps. Like, is it easy for people to actually access you in person if that is a requirement to the business? And then if the business is like online only, is it easy for them to access you in a digital capacity? Are you easily accessible through your website, your social media, your phone or email information that you have listed? If you have a space, is the space going to require any leasehold improvements or just general property improvements? If so, how much? I'd also include, if you had a leasehold or a physical location, are you comfortable doing like the renovations yourself, or do you plan to hire a contractor? Or is it kind of a mix of both, where maybe you just get a contractor to do specifically the electrical or the plumbing so that they can follow proper regulations, and then you're able to handle the things that people who have that general skill set can do, such as flooring, drywall, painting, things like that. If your business is web-based, you can provide designs or prototypes, even if it's just like pencil drawings or whatever, if you still haven't actually like developed it, along with kind of the rationale for the design, and if there's any like key selling features of the website that you plan to have implemented. So next is regulatory considerations. So, do you need any specific licenses, contracts, inspections to run your business? Do you have your, provincial business license? Do you have your NFN business license? Do you have a location and zoning in mind and consider all the bylaws around that? Are there any health inspections? Do you need intellectual property protection for a specific trademark or copyright? Are there any industry-specific licenses that are needed for employees? Do you have WSIB if that is one of the requirements? Are there any other specific certifications that you need to operate your business that you don't actually have yet, or do have and want to let a potential reader of the plan know that you've considered it? And then if there is anything that you haven't obtained that you have listed that you do need to obtain, then you need to make sure that you also write how you plan, or if you plan to get all those considerations together. So then your business license is something that you will need as well, operating in Ontario. And this would actually register you with the province and kind of offer you official proof that you have your business name registered. It costs $60 every 5 years, and that would register you either as a sole proprietorship or a partnership. It's not required to register a business, though, if you are operating as just your given name. So I'm Vincent Galea. So if I was just offering my services as someone who, kind of knows marketing and business planning, and I was just kind of doing consulting for somebody, they could invoice me as just Vincent Galea, and I wouldn't have to have a business registered. But if I was Galea Consulting, which I can't take that, that's my dad has the name for his corporation. But if I was, Galea Junior Consulting, whatever, I would need to have an operating name, and I would have to have a business registration or an incorporated business. This can be used at financial institutions as well to open business bank accounts to have your funds separated. And it's also usually required for any other government-related transaction, potentially employer health tax, WSIB. You don't have to worry about employer health tax unless your business was large enough to have a payroll of over $500,000, $450,000, something like that. So again, if you're at that point, let me know. I'd love to pass you on to people if you had any growth plans, but I'm assuming that's not the case. Another thing as well is insurance. Every business or most businesses definitely require liability insurance of some kind. You never know what kind of liability scenario could end up revolving around your business actions. Even as something as simple as you have a location and you just finished mopping the floors and someone walks in and doesn't realize that the floors are wet and they slip and they break their hip, and then a personal injury lawyer sues you for the damages and the cost of all their physio and whatever. That can happen and has happened. So this is why you would get liability insurance, so that you don't have to pay out of pocket if that was to be the case. Because if you weren't protected and you were asked to, get a lawyer to defend you, and it costed, so much money, and you didn't have it, then you were basically just asking the business to be bankrupt, unfortunately. If you're using your vehicle or home for business, you do want to discuss this with your personal insurance providers as well. So if you, have a vehicle and you're driving and you, God forbid, knock on wood, get in a accident of some kind and you need to make a claim, but you were actually driving to deliver one of your products to somebody's house, and they found out, the insurance company, they would probably try to weasel their way out of the claim. That's kind of what insurance companies are known to do, unfortunately. And this is why you want to make sure that they know all the details associated with your business, so that if you were to just openly tell them, yeah, I was delivering, a bunch of honey that I made to a store or a restaurant in Sudbury, and they were like, oh yeah, he told me he runs a bee farm already and that he would sometimes have to drive for business, and it is on his policy. So now that's perfectly fine. We can make the claim. Your certificate insurance must be in a business name if you are ever needing something that requires that certificate of insurance. So this would be a lot of grant or funding opportunities will never give out their funds unless the business has proof of insurance. They just can't risk the money getting caught up in a lawsuit right away, because they could give you a loan of $100,000 to open a retail store, and that same scenario just happens where someone walks in and they slip and they fall and they try to sue you. and that $100,000 is now gone. And you go bankrupt, but the bank or the funder also loses the funds as well too. So then they need to make sure that you've got insurance in place so that they don't lose their investment in you. Are there any security considerations for your business? This could be related to your actual physical business, your staff, your customers, anything like that. But it could also be digital security, which is a huge thing. I'm sure everyone knows somebody who's had their identity compromised or hacked, or their website or their bank accounts compromised, anything like that. So it's very important that if you keep any information on any of your customers, your staff, yourself, that you are doing everything as best as you can, or following best practices when it comes to storing information, having strong, up-to-date passwords. If you find out that a certain company that you had a password with was compromised, that you change that password or delete that account, just to prevent any holes from happening, so that you don't get a malicious attack of some kind. But also physical security is definitely important as well too. If you know you're in an area that's got a lot of foot traffic, and some of that foot traffic might not necessarily be the type of people that you want around your store, you never know, then making sure that you've got good security systems or CCTVs or alarms or anything like that, or just very strong locks, or the ability to store your assets depending on what's actually in the store, and also preventing having in the till too much cash on hand, things like that, to avoid those situations from happening. Are you going to have some kind of point of sales system, and does that system store data on customers? So then if the answer is yes, is that point of sale system provider known for having good security, so that that the information is encrypted when it goes to that cloud service? So say you get like a Square reader, it technically can store information on your customers, but Square has never been hacked to my knowledge, and they encrypt all their data. So they seem to be trustworthy when it comes to this aspect of the business. Does your business plan to be a part of any memberships? So this could be chambers of commerce. This could be purchasing a specific membership for an industry. So like say you're planning to start a nursing agency, and you're an RPN, then it might be worth having your nurses who are also RPNs join the RPNAO, because that membership offers potential liability insurance for your staff members, as well as potential different resources that can help the continued education of you and your staff members as well. So then it might be worth it from an industry perspective. Obviously, that's a very specific example. It is worth sometimes, if you think you're in like an industry that revolves around a specific trade, seeing if there is some kind of association or membership that might benefit you in some way. And if so, oh, sorry, I'm skipping ahead here. And if so, then you can list it on the business plan. And then the last section of the management and operations is capital assets, equipment, and vehicles. So this is basically a little write-up if you require any specialized equipment or vehicles that you don't have yet, or plan to get right away, or sometime in the next 5 years. So this is like if you need large stuff, like say you're doing cabinetry and you need like a huge industrial CNC machine, not just like you wouldn't write that you need a screwdriver here or a wrench here. Like this would be like bigger equipment that's required for the type of business that you're doing. And also, is that equipment going to be purchased? Is it going to be leased? When do you plan to obtain it? If you use a vehicle in your business, you kind of want to indicate as well how much percentage is going to be used for business. So a lot of times, I'd say 99% of the time when I'm dealing with a customer, they drive, they do plan to use their vehicle for business in some way, but it's going to be their personal vehicle. And obviously their personal vehicle is going to be used to pick up the kids from school, and to go to the grocery store, and to go to friends' houses on the weekend, whatever. So it's going to have some personal use to it. So in order to properly write off your vehicle expenses, you do need to actually keep an accurate vehicle log, and that will help determine what that percentage is going to be of business use for your vehicle versus personal use for your vehicle. And the easiest way to do that, a lot of times these days anyway, is a digital vehicle log. The QuickBooks app, if you end up doing your bookkeeping with QuickBooks, actually has a mileage tracker built into it. So it takes your GPS data whenever you park, and it says, hey, was this drive for business or for personal? And you can swipe left for business, swipe right for personal, and it will automatically log all the details of your drive, starting location, ending location. Even some of them are as advanced as average gas price in the area, things like that, to find out what your write-offs would be. And then there's also one called Mile IQ, MILE-IQ. It's a Microsoft mileage tracker, and it's not tied to a bookkeeping software. And I definitely recommend looking into that one. Like, say you end up using Sage or Wave or any other bookkeeping software, or you just want to do old school pen and paper or Excel, that's perfectly fine if you're comfortable with it. But you still want the convenience of the digital mileage tracker, then you'd probably want to look into Mile IQ. And that is it for the business planning stuff. So financial forecasting is going to be covered next week. Basically, the only other thing that we were planning to cover today, I just looked at the time and I went a little longer than I probably should have, but that's okay. The other thing we were going to cover is just kind of going over an elevator pitch. I can move that to another one of the workshops when I'm sure one of the workshops over these next couple of weeks is going to be shorter in time, so I'll make sure to throw in